Carol Sanders is her name, and this is the little girl in our story today. And raise your hand if you go to Sunday school. Some of you go to Sunday school? Okay, some of you do. Very good. Now raise your hand if you go to church. Okay, even more. Okay, well, Carol Sanders went to church and to Sunday school. And her Sunday school teacher's name was Miss Margaret. And she loved going to Sunday school. And she had some neighbors. She's sitting on her porch today with her little cat Trinket. And she's cutting out little circles is what she's doing. And little Trinket's sitting beside her, and he's always interested in whatever Carol's doing. Do any of you have a kitty cat? Raise your hand if you've got it. Oh, a bunch of you. Raise your hand if you've got a dog. Oh, more of you. Okay. Well, you know how it is when you've got a pet. They want to be right there by you, don't they? Well, Carol's little cat, Trinket, he always came right there beside her, everything she's doing. And today, she's cutting out little circles. And she's writing Bible verses on them is what she's doing. And she's talking to Trinket while she's doing it. She said, "Look at these circles, Trinket. One, aren't they colorful?" And she said, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She said, that's how many I need is 5. I have 5 students, just enough for my class tomorrow. Does that sound right? She's only 10, but she's got some students. How'd she get some students? Well, Trinket yawned and stretched just like he understood everything she said, and then he laid back down again. And so Carol's sitting there, and here comes her brother Chuck. And Chuck comes around the corner. He says, "Hey, Carol, come help me." He said, "I need somebody to throw the ball for me." He said, "I'm going to get really good at baseball, and I'm going to join Little League before long, so I'm going to be the best there is, and I'm going to be a pro baseball player before you know it." And so he said, "Come on, help me out with that, Carol." Carol said, "Okay, let me finish with these circles. I got to finish writing my Bible verses on them first." And he said, "Well, what are you doing? What are those circles for?" And she said, "Well, they're for my class." She said, "They're for my Saturday Sunday school class." A Saturday Sunday school class. It's a Sunday school class that's on Saturday is what that is. She said, "These are for my students. They're for my Saturday Sunday school class. I got to finish writing my Bible verses on there." And Chuck said, "Carol," he said, "you always hang around with those little kids in the neighborhood." He said, "You need to start hanging around with older kids. Mom and Dad said you need to hang around with kids your own age. Why don't you hang around with Susan and Marty and other girls your age?" He said, "You're always hanging around with the little kids." And she said, "Well, but I'm supposed to be older than they are." She said, "I'm the teacher, and teachers are supposed to be older than the kids, so I need little kids to be my students." And so Chuck said, "Yeah, but you need to be hanging around kids your own age." And she said, "Yeah, but I think it's important." She said, "I'm teaching the little kids in our neighborhood about Jesus." And she said, "And that's important that they learn about Jesus. They need to learn that." And he said, "Well, Carol, I've got an idea. Why don't you invite them to our Sunday school? They would like that. They could come to our Sunday school. And then you can spend time with kids your own age, and they can still learn the Bible verses and stuff." And she said, "Well, I did do that. I tried that. I asked if they could come to our Sunday school, but their parents won't let them. Their parents won't let them come to our church. And so they can't come to our Sunday school. So I figured I might as well have a Saturday Sunday school, and I'll teach them all the stories that I'm learning in my Sunday school." And so he didn't know what to say about that. So all summer long, Carol had her Saturday Sunday school class, and she had her 5 students. It was the Andersons and the Bandlows is who it was. And there were 2 Andersons. There was Carl and his little sister. Oh boy, I forgot her name. His little sister, I can't remember her name. I'll find it in a little bit. But Carl and his little sister, Agnes, that's what it was. And then all the Bandlows started with B. There was Brian, and there was some Betsy, Ben. All of them started with B's in the Bandlow family. And all summer long, she had her Saturday Sunday school class. And so, first of all, they started meeting under the big maple tree in Carol's front yard. They'd go out there under the big maple tree, and Carol would be the teacher. and she'd come up with all sorts of fun games for them to play. She kind of did like her Sunday school teacher did. And then they'd play a game, and then she'd learn the verses with them. She'd teach them the verses, and then she'd give them their little circle to take home and learn it so that they could bring it back next week and say the verse. Does your Sunday school teacher do stuff like that with you? Maybe give you a verse to learn sometimes and tell you to come back and say it? Or maybe you learn it in yours. They do at yours. So, or maybe you learn it in your Sunday school class. Some people learn it in there. Well, that's what Carol did. And then she told them the Bible story from Sunday school. And they all listened so well to Carol. She thought, I must be a really good teacher because they're all listening so good to me. And they all obeyed. And she had her little class under the big maple tree. But something happened. On Saturday mornings, you know how all the kids go out and play. So kids would be riding their bikes down the street. And sometimes they'd be laughing and giggling and making fun of them and stuff. And so she said, well, we'll move to the backyard. So they moved to the backyard, and Carol had this big beach umbrella back there. So they got to sit under the shade of the big beach umbrella. And they all liked that a lot better because it was shaded back there too. And so Carol was teaching them. Well, that didn't last too long either, because the next door neighbor put his dog Bruno in the backyard, and Bruno was barking and barking and barking. And the more they tried to get him quiet, the more Bruno barked. So Bruno was a loud dog. He just kept barking and barking, and they tried to quiet him down. It didn't work. So finally, Carol had to move the Saturday Sunday school class into the garage, in the back of Dad's garage. But it worked. It was okay. It worked. So all 5 children said they loved their Saturday Sunday school class. They all worked so hard. Even little Agnes, she would bring her little teddy bear with a little one glass eye missing and one glass eye on there, and they never missed a time. Kyle and Carl and Agnes never missed a time. And the Van Lowe children, they were faithful too. They all tried to learn the Bible verses. They all listened to the stories. And just like her teacher, Miss Margaret, taught them in Sunday school, they all listened. And they waited for her to pray, and sometimes they'd even ask if they could pray too. And so Carol let them pray sometimes too. And then they had the story, and they had games, and she thought, boy, I must be a pretty good teacher because they sure do listen and they obey me. And so one day, something kind of sad happened. When Carl came to the Sunday school meeting, or the Saturday Sunday school meeting, he told Carol, he said, this is the last time Agnes and I are going to get to come. He said, we're getting ready. Next week, we're moving to the other side of town. And we won't be close enough. We can't walk over here anymore. And so this is our last time. We won't be able to come anymore. And then that next week, 2 of the Van Lowe children had the measles. And so they couldn't come as a sickness. They couldn't come for several weeks. And then when they could come, it was too cold to come back again and meet outside. And so Carol never had the Saturday Sunday school class again after that. She got older, and yes, she tried to play with some of the kids her own age too, and the other kids in the neighborhood were growing up too. But one day she told her mama, she said, she was older now, she said, Mama, I think I am going to go to a college when I grow up. And she said, I think I'm going to go to a Bible college. And do you know, at Tabernacle we have a Bible college right here where they train people to be missionaries and teachers and preachers. And she said, I want to go to a Bible college one day. And her mama said, really? She said, well, Carol, why do you want to go to a Bible college one day? And Carol said, well, because I think I want to be a missionary when I grow up. And I want to go tell children about Jesus and tell them how they can be a Christian. She said, that's what I think Jesus wants me to do when I grow up, is to be a missionary. And so she did get her wish. Carol Jean Sanders became a missionary one day. She did go to Bible school. And after she graduated from Bible school, about 2 years later, she went to Africa to be a missionary. And sure enough, she went there and she told those children about Jesus and how to be a Christian. It wasn't easy because in Africa, they speak a different language. They don't speak English like you do. And so she had to learn a new language, and it took a lot of work. She had to work really hard. She learned a new language, and she even had an adult class. She taught children and adults, and she even had a little neighborhood class on Saturdays. And you know what she called it? the Saturday Sunday school, just like she did when she was little and she was teaching other little children in her neighborhood. Well, one day she was excited. She wrote a letter home and she said, guess what? I'm coming home for a whole year for a vacation. She said, I've been in Africa almost 5 years now. She said, and it's time for me to come home for a vacation, and I'll be home for a whole year. And she said, so watch for me. I'm coming home. I'm going to get on my airplane and fly on back. And so she did. She came home, and she was having a great time with her family, and she was helping out in church this time in Sunday school. And one day, it was about a month after she was home, there was a knock at the door. Who's there? And it was a young man. And he said, I'm here to see Carol. Is Carol here? And her mama said, yes, she's right back here. So she brought this young man back there, and he said, hi, Carol. And he shook her hand. He said, do you remember me? He said, I'm Carl Anderson. He said, I'm all grown up now. He said, I just wanted to come and tell you thank you. He said, I was one of your students when you had your little Saturday class, when you had your Saturday Sunday school. He said, I wanted to tell you thank you for teaching us little kids. He said, I was only 7 years old back then. And Carol said, yes. And she said, and I was only 11. She said, I was 10 and I turned 11 that summer. She said, I remember that. She said, oh, and you had a little sister, didn't you? Agnes. How is Agnes? And Carl said, Agnes is not little anymore. She's grown up too. He said, she's getting ready to finish with school, like the big kids in the other building, you know, the oldest ones. He said, she's getting ready to finish with school. And he said, you know what she's going to do? She said she's saving her money because she wants to go to a Bible school like you did. And she wants to tell children about Jesus just like you told us. He said, and I became a Christian that summer when you taught us about Jesus. Later that summer, I became a Christian too. And she said, oh, that's such good news. And tears came to her eyes. She was so excited. She said, well, what about the Banlow children? Do you know what happened to them? And he said, yes. He said, Brian they bugged their parents so long and said, we want to go to Sunday school. We want to go to Sunday school. Please take us to Sunday school. And finally, they took him to Sunday school. And he said, Brian became a Christian when he was a teenager, and now he leads a youth group in a boys and girls club. And he teaches children about Jesus too, just like you taught us. And Carol, she said, she thanked God. She said, thank you, Jesus, for helping me to be a missionary when I was a little girl. And she said, thank you for giving me a Sunday school teacher, Miss Margaret, that taught me about Jesus so that I could teach others too. And you know, some of you probably, I know some of you already go to Sunday school in the church. And you know, if you do, if you're already a Christian, you should be a missionary now. You know that song you sang earlier, be a missionary today, let's go. It doesn't say, let's be a missionary when we grow up. You don't have to wait until you grow up. Do you know that you can reach people that grown-ups can't reach? You know, if Carol Sanders' neighbors, you know, if the Andersons and the Banlows said, I want to go over to the grown-up neighbor's house and I want to go over there, their parents probably would have said, no, there's no kids over there for you to play with. Why would you want to go over there? And they probably wouldn't let them. But you know what? They let them come to Carol's house because there was a child to play with. You know, you could reach some of your neighbors for Jesus. You know, some of your neighborhood children may not go to Sunday school or church. And you know, their parents may not let them go, or maybe their parents don't think it's important enough to go. Maybe they don't take the time to go. You know, some grown-ups don't realize that it's important to go to church and Sunday school. And you could be their little missionary. You could be their missionary. Neighbors in your neighborhood or children that you know, that their parents might let them listen to a child when they might not let them listen to an adult. There might be no other child that they know that knows Jesus. So if you're saved, if you're a Christian, you should be a little missionary in Naples. You don't have to wait until you grow up. You can be like Carol, and you can tell others in your neighborhood. If you go to Sunday school and learn Sunday school lessons, you can go to your neighbors and teach them those same Sunday school lessons. You learn about Jesus here at school, don't you? You do. You have a Bible time here at school. But I know your teacher here has to teach you other things. You have to learn phonics, and you have to learn reading, and you have to learn, probably some of you are even learning about grammar and language now, aren't you? You have to learn about math and history, social studies, science. You've got so much to learn about in school. Your teacher has to teach a lot of other things too. But it's important that you go to church and Sunday school too. If you don't go to church and Sunday school yet, maybe you could be like those Banlow children. Maybe you could say, Mom, Dad, I really want to go to church and Sunday school. Will you take me to church and Sunday school? I want to learn about Jesus so that I can tell other children about Jesus. I don't know all the stories yet. I need to learn more. Will you take me to church and Sunday school so that I can learn more? So I can teach the other children too? The Banlow children asked. Their parents didn't know that it was important to go to Sunday school. The children had to ask. So you can ask your parents too. Maybe if your parents don't take you, maybe they don't know how important that is. You can tell them, I want to learn about Jesus so that I can tell others about Jesus too. And you're learning some in school, I know, but it's also important that you go to Sunday school and church. You'll learn even more there because here your teacher has to teach you a lot of stuff. I'm so glad you're in a Christian school where you get to have Bible time. And just like chapel time today, you get to learn about Jesus in chapel time too. But it's so important that you get to learn about Jesus. And so we don't have much, really, we don't have any time. Maybe we'll sing this song again. Maybe I'll ask you just a few questions so that I can maybe give out a few prizes if I can. So let's sing this song one more time. Let's stand up and sing it, and then we'll sit down and ask some questions, okay? So you can be a little missionary right now, okay? You don't have to wait until you get older. All right, let's sing it. I can be a little missionary, talk about my Jesus everywhere I go. I can share his love with all my neighbors, 'cause Jesus tells me so. I think I was kind of standing in front of the words, wasn't I? Okay, you can sit down. I'll ask just a few questions, and if you get it right, you can come up and just get something out of the little, or maybe I'll give the prize thing to Miss Wallace back here. That way everybody's not watching the person.